author Max Evans shares a few meaningful experiences from his life in New Mexico.
Sometimes there's more truth in fiction than in truth or than in real life.
If you tell a true story, let's say I'm interviewing someone for a story, for a magazine, put it simple like that, and then I'm obligated to that person to tell the truth the best I can, the most interesting way I can, as they related it to me. But in fiction, I'm allowed to take my lifetime observations of all animals, human and wild or whatever, or tame, and insert that into fiction. And that's why I say you can reach a greater truth, because you're not using a singular approach, you're using a lifetime approach.
How do you find that truth through the process of writing?
I'm not much on this process, because I write out of just emotion. But there has to be a process no matter what your emotion is. And I think even in the wildest of fiction, you know, innately you know, okay, I'm telling a truth. And you just simply know it by life experiences, by the experience of putting words down. They're the same in a strange way. What you're doing, you're extracting the essence of life into the essence of a story.
Your Westerns aren't shoot 'em ups. Could you talk more about these untold stories in the Western genre?
Before the pickup truck came along, horses and everything was slow. They used wagons, transportation. Sometimes they go all the way to town to shop with wagon and team. And then everything changed, because at that time, and for a short time after, which I wrote about, people depended on their humor. Hardly anyone even had a radio. They had no television. They had no movies. So their humor that everyone has to have to survive was simply in between two people or three people, and they had to invent their own humor. And I noticed this as a kid when I first took a job on a ranch, that these people had this grand sense of humor, more than I'd already related to in my life. And it dawned on me after World War II that part of the story, here comes the pickup now, it's beginning to take over. So I will not, if I don't tell this, it'll never be told. And that was a driving force, and then I enjoyed it. I started laughing with them, and I remembered things that had happened, the cowboys, how they'd kid one another, and all the pranks they'd pull on one another. Their own set of movies and radio and their own cell phones were in their head only, and in their souls and in their observation and what would be funny to them or to their friend. So that was a world I wanted to tell in the beginning. And then of course I did that in the Rounders and some of it in the high-low country, although I started spreading out into the bartender would be, or a grocery clerk would be just as important as the cowboy in my stories. So that transition was a tremendous transition if you're going to think about the West as part of America. It was part of America.
What would you call that phenomenon of living your writing before you even write it?
The word creative, as a kid, 10, 12, 13, even 14, you don't realize what the word creative really means in its totality. But you're doing it. You're absorbing all the world around you. If you have it, or you're going to be a writer, you don't know it. I don't think you know it. I think you're readers first. It was a thing that inspired me deeply. On the first ranch I went to work for up on Glorieta Mesa, south of Santa Fe, there was no telephone, no mail service, no newspaper. There was nothing but just us, the horses, the cattle, and the wild animals. There was no communication with the outside world whatsoever. And I think one of the most beautiful things that I experienced was a ranch lady, the boss's wife, who did the cooking. She painted the pictures that were on the wall. She made the rugs that were on the floor, the lamps that you had to hang, and there's no electricity. You had to bring in kerosene for the lamps. All of that she made. And I discovered that one night because I carried the water for the stove. I chopped the wood for her cook stove. And at night, I volunteered on my own to dry dishes for her. Because I couldn't imagine. I started looking around. I thought, my God, this woman is holding the whole world together here. This ranch wouldn't exist. And that's the way it is all over the so-called West. And then it was a terribly sinful thing that we were all doing. We were neglecting the awareness and the appreciation of what the women were doing to hold us all together. And that was a tremendous, deep inspiration to me. And we talked many things. I got to talking painting with her. I mean, she had never had a lesson in the world. She just decorating this old ranch house. So she painted some pictures to put up. They were pretty darn good primitives.
Right.
They influenced my soul, my heart. She did that greatly while I'm drying dishes for her each and every night. That's one way.
Sure.
That was my way. I didn't choose it. It just happened. I was there, and I somehow became, while I was there, I became aware.
Why write it down?
You can't help it. I've never known a writer that could help himself. A real writer. If you are a writer, and that's how you're going to, you may not be able to make a living at it, but you're going to maintain your soul. And if you are, that's what you're going to do. And you're going to have those things all through your life. The great cord of life is going to have little knots here and there. It's going to have little wonderful things that along the string, the cord, that are in your head and in your soul, and that's what you're going to put down, and you can't help it. You can't do a cockeyed thing about it.